Hello everyone, I'm Sreelakshmi. Welcome back. And this is going to be the last part of chapter 1. So in this section, we will be first discussing on benefits of audit, and then we will move on to all the questions in study material and finish it off. Okay. So first, benefits of audit. Audit. This audit can be done either mandatorily. So it's mandatory, or it can be done voluntarily. So it is voluntary. Okay. Mandatory or voluntary. What do you mean by mandatory? Mandate. Compulsorily you have to do. There is no option. You have to do. The entity has to undergo audit. For example, income tax law. A particular threshold of turnover is exceeded, then income tax law mandates those entities to undergo audit. There is no option, they have to undergo audit. So it can be done by entity mandatorily or it can be voluntary. For example, they may not cross that particular limit, but they wanted to know, okay, whether the accounts are true and fair, whether accounts are proper, whether the FS is proper. So this is done by because of the benefits attached to it, because of benefits attached to audit. So voluntarily done is at the option of the entity. They can do, or if they don't want, they don't have to do. Because no doesn't mandate them. There is no mandatory requirement. It is at their option. So that is why it's called as voluntary. Now let's talk about these benefits. Okay. So as we said, whether the FS is materially misstated, whether due to fraud or whether due to error, this will be known only if the accounts are audited, right? Yes. Then, to know about the employee morale. Employee morale. Okay, it's an employee morale check. If there is fraud happening in the company, it's committed by employee. What about their morale, right? So it's an employee morale check. Then regarding the internal control of the organization. Okay, auditor is not going to is not responsible for any internal control in the entity. He is going to evaluate the FS, and during the process of audit, he will come to know that some proper controls are not at place. Okay, so the he will be able to point out deficiencies in the internal control. So regarding the internal control, pointing out deficiencies. Okay, deficiencies in internal control. For example, management may place some checks at particular points in the transaction. Okay, in the transaction flow, there are some points. Okay, so there are some checks in that particular transaction. But some checks may not be appropriate. And in some places, there should have been a control, but there is no control. Such things may happen, which means that the internal control is having some deficiencies. Audit is a way to discover such deficiencies. Now let's take the case of banks. Okay, they may give us credit facilities if we request, right? But beforehand, we have to audit our accounts. That may be requested by the banks. So at the request of the bank, entity may have to perform audit. Then government. Okay, government may be giving us some grants or assistance, but government requires us to audit our accounts. So that is one such another requirement. Okay, assistance or grants. Then quality of information. Quality of information. Okay, because of audit, quality of information is there. Then it helps shareholders. Shareholders may not be there in everyday activities, right? So to know how the entity is functioning. So to protect their interest, audit is done. So these are the benefits attached to audit. Okay. Whether voluntarily or involuntary done, which means whether mandatory done, these are the benefits. Okay. Rohit, Gurpreet, Ali and Gorati are friends since their school days based in Mumbai. They have cleared CA foundation exams in the same attempt and now plan to appear for CA intermediate exams. All of them are avid news listeners and regularly keep track of business news even on social media. Okay, just like you, they have cleared CA foundation exams and now they are appearing for intermediate exams. So they are trying to understand new subjects including auditing. Rohit, Gurpreet and Ali have also started attending live coaching classes being conducted by Board of Studies of ICAI. Gorati has not been able to join live coaching classes yet as she was away on a holiday with her parents. However, she plans to catch it up with her friends very soon. Ali had also joined the classes but he had skipped some lectures. So Gorati and Ali has skipped some lectures, right? Yeah. Now, during one informal get-together, the discussion centered around new subjects of auditing. They discussed many things regarding its nature, scope, benefits, and other general practical issues. Gorati was regular in keeping track of audited results of companies being published in leading newspapers. Her view was that audited financial statements of companies give 100% guarantee to different stakeholders. Is this view correct? No, right? It's the main reason behind so much reliance upon auditing. If she thinks that it's 100% guarantee, we are only giving as an auditor, do we give absolute assurance? No, reasonable, right? But she could not understand why wrongdoings in financial matters are being discovered after many years have gone by. Why? Because of inherent limitations of audit. Ali also concurred with her view and added that when financial statements are audited, each and every transaction appearing in books of account is verified. However, he could not give clarity to Gaurathi. Is that right? Every transaction is audited. Gurpreet was of the opinion that audit was conducted on the basis of sample checking. Okay, that is right. Sample checking is done. He was also of the view that audited financial statements are not a guarantee against probable wrongdoings in financial matters of the company. That's true. Not to be left behind, Rohit also jumped in the fray. He supported Gurpreet and also added something of his own. Okay, now let's go to the questions. First one. Gurpreet was of the view that audited financial statements are not a guarantee against probable wrongdoings in financial statements of companies. What kind of assurance does audit of financial statements provide? Very easy for you. What kind of assurance? Reasonable. Okay, all those are having reasonable as answer. Let's go to the other part. So here reasonable means moderate level. No, false. Reasonable means low level. Reasonable meaning high level of assurance. Reasonable meaning absolute level of assurance, which is true. High level of assurance. So option C is right. Now second question. Rohit added that auditor can force an employee of the company to provide him required information and documents. Force an employee? No, that can't be done, right? Yeah. He can request information, but does he has the power of a police officer? No. Power of search? No. So that is not there. So no, he cannot do. He can't force. But he can request. Okay, he can request to provide him with information and documents that he needs. That is rare, but cannot force him. Okay. So this is the right answer. Now the third question. Ali had listened in one of the classes that audit covers all aspects of an entity and concluded that each and every transaction of entity is verified by the auditor. Gaurathi also seemed to be in agreement with him, but she was of the view that each and every transaction is verified by auditor. Hmm? Okay, Gaurath, and she is of the view that besides this, it is also meant that audit should be so organized to cover all areas of an entity. Which of the statement is appropriate in this regard? Okay, whether Ali is correct or whether Gaurathi is correct. What was Ali's viewpoint? Ali listened to one of the classes, okay, and covers all aspects of an entity. Concluded that each and every transaction of entity is verified. That is incorrect for sure. So Ali is incorrect in this regard. Each and every transaction cannot be verified because of timeliness of audit. Gaurathi also seemed to be in agreement with him. So she agrees him. Okay. So she is also not right. She was of the view that besides it, it's also meant that audit should be so organized to cover all areas of entity. I think both of the views are incorrect. Now, all of them, this is the fourth question, okay? All of them discussed about benefits of auditing. Okay, we just discussed benefits. I think you can answer this. Which of the following is not likely benefit of auditing? Question is to be noted, not likely a benefit, which means not the benefit, okay? First is that since auditing is connected to future events, audited information can be easily relied upon by users. No, wrong. Errors or frauds may be discovered. I'm actually answering this in perspective of benefit, okay? So this is not a benefit. So this is actually the right answer. But let's move on to these. Errors or frauds may be discovered during audit. We have discussed this. This is a benefit. Government authorities can make use of audited accounts for different purposes. Yes. For assistance, for grants, yes. It can help in bringing out deficiencies in maintenance of financial records. Yeah. In case of any deficiencies, it can be noted because of audit, right? Yeah. Now the last question. Gaurav told her friends that she had read a news report about how a company has misled its auditors by producing some fabricated documents. So fabricated documents are being produced to the auditor. Which of the following statements seems to be appropriate in this regard? Option 1. It was wrong on the part of auditor to rely upon fabricated documents. He must have discovered it at some as the same falls within the scope of his duty. Scope of his duty. Is it within the scope of audit? No, let's go to the next. Although it was wrong on the part of auditor to rely upon fabricated documents, he cannot do anything in the matter. He has to report on the basis of documents provided to him. He has no duty in this regard. Okay, move on to the next. Auditor has to conduct audit by exercising professional skill, but is not an expert in discovering genuineness of documents. Hence, management consisting of dishonest persons may have led him to rely upon fabricated documents deliberately. Management cannot mislead auditor due to high level of knowledge and expertise possessed by him. The above is an outlier case, one of the rare odd cases. Under which head we have discussed this? Just because of this particular thing. Okay, this particular phrase, genuineness of documents, scope of duty. Okay, fabricated documents. I think you have understood which part we have discussed. In scope of audit, you remember we have told that authentication is not within the scope of audit. Okay, so authentication of documents, is it within the scope of audit? No. Right? So genuineness of documents cannot be discovered by auditor. So the option is C. Okay, now going to MCQ based questions. Which of the following is not an advantage of audit? Okay, not an advantage, which means not a benefit. It provides high quality financial information. It's a benefit of audit. It acts as a moral check on employees. Yes, benefit of audit. It enhances risk of management bias. It helps in safeguarding interest of shareholders. Yes. So the right answer is not an advantage means C. Okay, we haven't told anything like is this a benefit? It enhances risk of management bias. No, right? So the option is C. Now, which of the following is not true about an assurance engagement? What is the first one? It relates to providing assurance about historical financial information only. Do you remember? Assurance engagement is not only on historical financial information. Remember these essays were there, then SREs were there, SAEs were there. So these are the assurance engagements, right? Both these two are on historical, but SAEs are not on historical, right? So this is the answer. What about these three? Practitioner obtains sufficient appropriate evidence. Yes, regarding assurance engagement, they obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. Yes. There is some information to be examined by practitioner. Yes. subject matter is to be examined by the practitioner. Yes. A written assurance report in appropriate form is issued by practitioner. Yes. Assurance report is to be given by the practitioner. Yes. So this is the right answer. It's not only about historical but also other than historical. Remember regarding controls, right? Now, which of the following is true about engagement standards? True about. Okay. Engagement standards ensure proper rights to practitioner in course of performance of their duties, ensure preparation and presentation of financial information in a standardized manner, ensure uniformity by practitioner in course of performance of their duties, ensure savings in resource of clients. So these are within the purview of, in the perspective of the practitioner. Okay, these 3 points. Which is the right answer? It provides uniformity. Remember this? Now, consider the following statements in relation to limited assurance engagement. Okay, limited assurance engagement means limited conclusion, limited procedure. Remember? What is the statement 1? It involves obtaining sufficient appropriate evidence to do reasonable conclusion. Can a reasonable conclusion be obtained? No, only a limited conclusion, right? So this is actually wrong. Then what's the second statement? Review of internal financial information of a company is an example of limited assurance. Yes, one of the SREs is this, right? So which means 2 is correct, 1 is incorrect. Okay, 1 is incorrect, 2 is correct. So this is the right option. Now, 5th one. Which of the following is true about standards on auditing? Okay, what's the first one? These deal mainly with voluntary responsibilities of auditor. Okay. Mainly with mandatory responsibilities of auditor. Yes. The sole purpose is to help government authorities in augmenting revenue. No. Deal mainly in carrying out audit according to legal provision. So these are not what standards on audit. Right? So standards on auditing, it encompasses, the main objective is to be achieved by the auditor. It is not voluntarily, it is mandatory. Because auditor has to comply with the standards on auditing and they have to achieve the objective of the standard. So what is the right answer? B. Because mandatory responsibilities. Okay. Now, the others were the benefits actually, benefits of audit. Now, correct or incorrect? State with reasons in short whether the following statements are correct or incorrect. The basic objective of audit does not change with reference to nature, size or form of an entity. This is correct, right? Whatever be the form of entity we are going to audit, the objective remains the same. What is the objective? Reasonable assurance is to be obtained. Yes, right? We have to express an opinion. Yes. So this is the basic objective. This is not going to change. Okay, any entity you audit, this is the basic objective. So for these questions, you have to first state whether it is correct or incorrect and then you have to provide the reason. Now, what is the second question? The purpose of an audit is to enhance the degree of confidence of intended users in financial statement. Yes, that is right only. Okay. What is this audit? Audit is a kind of assurance engagement, right? Assurance engagement are supposed to improve or enhance the confidence of the intended users. Now, what is the third question? The auditor is not expected to and cannot reduce audit risk to zero and cannot therefore obtain absolute assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement due to fraud or error. This statement is also correct. Do you remember in the inherent limitations part, inherent limitations of audit, we have just written 3 sentences. That is, the auditor cannot reduce the audit risk to zero. Yes, true. Then, cannot obtain absolute assurance. True. And one more thing we have written. What is that? Cannot give a conclusive opinion. Okay, that's an add-on. Conclusive opinion cannot be given by the auditor. Only persuasive opinion shall be given by the auditor. Okay. Now let's move on to these theoretical questions. Choosing of appropriate accounting policies in relation to accounting issues is responsibility of management. Do you agree? Yes, we have already discussed this part in the beginning of the session. It is a responsibility of the management to prepare the financial statement in preparation of the selection and consistency of accounting policy. As we as an auditor, what is our duty? We will evaluate whether the accounting policy is consistent, whether the selection is appropriate. That is our part. Okay. So you have to first state whether you agree or not, and then you have to address this part of the question. That is a duty of auditor, and you have to substantiate it. Okay. Now next one. Assurance engagement are not restricted to audit or financial statement alone. Discuss. Yes, that is true. It's not just restricted to audit of FS. There are other assurance engagement as we have discussed in one of the previous session, right? I mean, here we have told, no, there are SAEs, SREs, SAEs. So these are all assurance engagement standards. There are other types of engagement standards. So you have to state that and discuss it. So it's not restricted to audit. There are review engagements and other assurance engagement. Okay. An assurance engagement involves a three-party relationship. Discuss meaning of three parties in such an engagement. Okay, this is from assurance engagement in general. We have discussed about the elements of assurance engagement and involves three parties. Do you remember three parties? Responsible party is there. Intended users are there. Then we are as practitioner were there. Okay, you have to substantiate it and discuss the meaning. A chartered accountant is specifically asked to check accounts whether fraud exists. State with reason whether it is an example of reasonable assurance engagement. Okay, specifically asked. A chartered accountant is specifically asked to check accounts whether fraud exists, right? Fraud exists. So it's kind of investigation. It's not like an audit actually. It's kind of investigating whether fraud is there, right? So state with reasons whether it is an example of reasonable assurance engagement. Now the fifth question is, an audit does not provide absolute assurance. Discuss how nature of audit procedure itself is one of the reasons due to which audit cannot provide absolute assurance. This is from the part of inherent limitations of audit. Due to nature of audit procedure, there are limitations to audit, right? That is why we are not able to provide absolute assurance. We are only able to give reasonable assurance. Okay. This we have discussed in this part. I'll take that. Do you remember this inquiry, fraud and investigation? This part we have discussed. That's the answer. Now coming to test your understanding 1. Lalji Bai has purchased shares of a company listed on NSE. The audited financial statements of the company provide picture of healthy financial performance, having robust turnover, low debt and good profits. On above basis, he is absolutely satisfied that the money invested by him is safe and there is no chance of losing his money. The audited results and audit reports of companies provide such assurance to investors like Lalji Bai. Is thinking of Lalji Bai correct? Okay, so who is Lalji Bai here? He is an intended user, right? Yes, he is one of the intended user because he is a shareholder. Assurance engagement are such that it provides confidence to intended user. Yes, that is true. What kind of thing is that he is using to get that confidence? Audited FS, which means it's because of audit, right? But can audit provide absolute assurance? No. So only reasonable assurance can only be given, right? Yes. Now, what about this thing? What? Share price. Everything is right. What? There is an audited FS. The financial performance is really good. But he is not able to provide absolute assurance because of inherent limitations of audit. And there are other things that are affecting the share prices. Okay, so for example, in US-Israel war against Iran, if you have noticed, you will be knowing that the share prices were very low. Okay, that is one of the influence of war in the share price. Similarly, there are other factors like demand, supply. So it's not just that audited FS that is going to undermine the value of shares, right? So there are other factors as well. So what is the first question? Do audited results and audit report of companies provide such assurance to investors like Lalji Bai? No, no absolute assurance can be provided. And the Lalji Bai's thought is incorrect. Okay, always answer every part of the question. They are asking two parts. First one is that do audit results and audit reports of companies provide such assurance? No, that should be answered. Similarly, whether his thought is correct, that also should be answered, and then you have to substantiate it with your points. Now, the next question, test 2 understanding 2. Okay. Good Deeds Limited is engaged in business of recycling of wastes from dumping grounds of Municipal Corporation of Indore to usable manure. It is in this way also helping to make the city clean, right? So what is that company doing? It is doing recycling of wastes. Okay. And then it's turning into a usable manure. So that is the way that it keeps city clean. Okay. During the course of audit by Zoa and Zoa, a firm of auditors, it is observed by auditors that company has received a notice from Central Bench of National Green Tribunal for not following certain environmental regulations involving imposition of hefty monetary penalty on the company. Okay, so there is a penalty imposed, and from where? The notice from the Central Bench of National Green Tribunal. Okay, so from tribunal they have received a notice and they have an imposition of hefty monetary penalty. The company is yet to reply to the notice. So they haven't replied yet. The auditors point out the same is not stated in notes to accounts and financial statement. The company points out that auditors are going beyond scope of their work. Okay, so the company is saying that this is not within the scope of audit. So the question is, does such a matter fall within the scope of audit? Okay, anything that is related to FS is within the scope of audit except the preparation and presentation part. Okay, we are going to evaluate everything that is revolving within FS, right? Coming to this hefty penalty. Okay, for the penalty, it has an implication in FS. Okay, it appears in expense part for sure. And it will also determine the profit because it will alter the profits, which is, okay, just imagine the penalty we have taken into consideration. FS will have implications if penalty is to be paid by the company. The profit will be reduced and thereby other results are also going to get reduced, right? So it has an effect in FS. So because of that, it is within the scope of audit. Say, suppose if there is some other tribunal, okay, and there is some other case or something, but it doesn't have any effect on FS or it doesn't require any disclosure in FS. That is not within our scope. But this is related to FS and this has an impact on FS. Yes, this is within the scope of audit. So you have to substantiate this point. Okay, it is within the scope of audit because it is pertaining to the FS only. Now coming to the third question. A huge fire broke out in Noida plant of KT Limited. Plant assets comprising building, machinery, inventories were insured from branch of a public sector insurance company. Okay. Apart from an insurance surveyor who was deputed for assessing loss, the Regional Office of Insurance PSU also appointed a CA for verification of books of account, financial records of the company and circumstances surrounding the loss. He was also requested to submit an early report. Okay, so put the report by CA in the nature of audit report. Okay, this is very specific. This is kind of what? An investigation. Okay, this is not audit. Whether any specific procedure or specific requirement will be stated for audit? No. Right? Here a fire broke out in Noida and there were many plant assets. Okay. And also they were assessing loss. To assess the loss, a CA was appointed. And he was specifically asked to verify the books of account and financial record. Just to know that where that loss is natural. Okay. Natural in the sense whether the nature of fire broke out in Noida plant and the impact, no. That is not of a defraud nature. Okay. That is to be reported. So this is not an audit. They want to know whether the loss is because of real factors, whether there is a fraud in the company. That is the intention. So this is kind of a nature of investigation. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question. Zeba Products is a partnership firm engaged in trading of designer dresses. The firm has appointed JJ and Company chartered accountants to audit their accounts for a year. So Zeba is a designer dresses trading company, okay, partnership firm, not company, firm. And JJ and Company is the chartered accountancy firm. The auditors were satisfied with control system of firm, carried out required procedures and necessary verifications. In particular, they carried out sample checking for purchases, traced purchase bills to GST portal, and also made confirmations from suppliers. So these are the procedures done. Okay. Now, they were satisfied with audit evidence obtained by them as part of audit exercise. So, they are satisfied with the evidences. An audit report was submitted to the firm giving an opinion that financial statements reflect a true and fair view of state of affairs of the firm. So, it was a clean report, right? Yes. However, later on it was discovered that purchase manager responsible for procuring dresses from one location was also booking fake purchases of small values by colluding with unethical dealers. Payments to these dealers were also made in connivance with accountant through banking channel. So this is a case of fraud, right? Yes. The partners of the firm blame auditors for futile audit exercise. Are partners on firm correct in this viewpoint? Imagine any probable reasons for such a situation. Basically, this is with regard to internal control, right? There should be an internal control within the firm. Then only there will be a very good policy and procedure. There would be good financial reporting happening in the firm. So there is, even though everything pertaining to audit were good, which means the audit evidences, when they were doing all these procedures, they were very satisfied. This means the chartered accountant firm is really satisfied. But what happened is that later on there was a fraud, or there was a case of collusion. Okay, is auditor responsible for this default or deficiencies in internal control? No. So auditors cannot be blamed, right? So the partner's viewpoint is not right, and you have to read write some probable reasons for the same. Okay, so point out all those inherent limitations of audit. The management of Exotic Tours and Travels Limited requested its auditor, Raja and Company, to provide assurance report on the financial information for the first quarter of a year by skipping required detailed procedures. Can Raja and Company provide such a report? What would be the nature of such a report? Would it be necessary for them to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence in such a case? Okay, so this is regarding a quarter-wise report, right? Remember, review reports are of such kinds. Remember the SREs? Yeah, we discussed, no? So this is a type of review engagement. And also just understand that they have specifically stated by skipping required detailed procedures. So only limited procedures are performed. So this is a review engagement. So what's the nature of such a report is? Review. Can Raja and Company provide such a report? Yes. By complying with SREs? Yes. Would it be necessary for them to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence? Yes, yes. Sufficient appropriate evidence shall be there, because this is also a type of assurance engagement only, right? Even though we are giving limited conclusion or limited assurance level, but still this is an assurance engagement, right? Sufficient appropriate evidence is required, even though limited procedures are performed. Okay. Now let's move to the last question. CAP Babu is conducting the audit of financial statements of Quickbuy Private Limited. He was not able to obtain external confirmation from certain debtors due to practical difficulties. Okay, and peculiar circumstances. However, such a procedure is mandated under one of the standards on auditing. So, external confirmation is required. Okay, this is as per SC 505. We'll discuss later. I think in another chapter it's there. Unable to obtain external confirmation from these debtors, he relied upon sale details to these parties, e-invoices, e-way bills, and also trace payments from these parties in bank accounts of the company, which means that he has performed what kind of procedure? Alternate procedure. right? Yes. He was reasonably satisfied with audit evidences obtained. Is there any other reporting duty cast upon him relating to not following a mandated procedure in one of standards on auditing? So he was satisfied, right? Okay, if a particular objective of the standard cannot be achieved as per SC 200, I think you remember this. If a particular objective cannot be achieved through the procedure that is prescribed in the standard helps you or standard accepts that you can perform an alternative procedure, but you have to achieve the objective of the standard. In whatever way, objective of the standard shall be achieved. And he shall also document. Okay, documentation is required. Document why it is a practical difficulty. Okay, why there is a deviation. Why he is not doing the prescribed procedure. Why such an alternate procedure is done. Also, what is the procedure done that shall be documented and how he achieved the objective, and particularly it is the reason for departure. Okay, reason for departure. These are the things that you should state in the answer part. So what's the last part? Is there any other reporting duty cast upon him relating to not following a mandated procedure in one of the standards on auditing? So the reporting duty is that he has to document. Okay, documentation shall be done. If the objective is achieved, yes, alternative procedure can be performed by the auditor. Okay. So we have completed this chapter, and maybe from your part some efforts can be put. Let me call it as tips from my end. So first I would like you to go through the study material and do a basic reading. Okay, in this reading, what I meant is that take your time, read it slowly and understand the concept. Okay, just call it as day one. If you're doing it today after the session, you have to read it. Okay, try to read it. And then in day two, mostly in the same time you can take it corresponding to day one. Then you have to read the heading. Okay, heading of each topic. Say for example, there is a heading, inherent limitations of audit. So take that heading and close your eyes and recollect it. Recollect as much points as you can. And then you may miss out few points. So that points shall only be highlighted by you. Okay. And mark it. Okay. So highlight it and mark it. In day one, when you're reading the basic reading, don't use any highlighters. You may use pencil and mark. Okay. This day, use pencil. Don't do any bold lines. It's just for you to point out. But in heading part, no, the second day when you're doing, highlight it if you have missed the points. Not every point is going to be highlighted. Only those that are missed out. Okay, miss out from your end. And in day 3, no, let's call this day as practice. Okay, practice day, where you will do a practice writing. This should be in writing. Okay, for audit, write and practice, because writing part is the predominant part, I would say, in exam. Because for practical questions or practical subjects, you will be practicing by writing. Okay, you will somehow scribble and all. But for audit, if you are only reading, and when it comes to writing, some people may find it difficult. That is why it is always advised to write and practice audit. Even if it's just 2 questions, it's enough. So you may take 3 questions. Okay, 3 questions and try to write it. Without looking, write it. Maybe for first time if you are writing, you can write one by looking. But don't do for other questions. Okay, and also if you are going to analyze your answer also, what I would suggest is that try to use as much as the phrases that match with the study material. Okay, your answer may be right. Yes, of course, because you will be knowing the concept. But for example, say for audit evidence, sufficient and appropriate is the word to be used. Similarly, for accounting policies, the word that matches is selection and consistency of policy. So such phrases are there. So try to match with the study material. So these are the things that from my end. I hope you liked the video. I hope you enjoy learning and stay blessed. Let's meet with another chapter. Bye. Take care.